All right, taking a break from seascapes today. I am out at McNee Ranch in Montera, California. Just kind of looking around, deciding what to paint. There's some nice trees and hills and a trail. And there's also some nice moisture in the atmosphere right now. It's about 9 a.m. That moisture will be burning off, so I'll have to work quickly, but let me show you what I'm thinking. All right, so there's a trail here and then some nice sort of pine trees. I'm not even sure what these are, sort of scrub pine. And then distant hills. So I'm thinking of working, looking in this direction. Obviously I have to move things around, but looks like there's plenty to work with. All right, here is the composition. I'm working on a 14 by 18 inch panel, definitely moving things around to, you know, try to get a good composition or just like a nice arrangement of shapes. I'm working with this tree right here, the trail, and these trees, and then the distant hills. As usual, I started with simple shapes and then came back and sort of refined those shapes. And now I'm ready to start blocking in my darks. The trees are the darkest portion of the composition. There's also some darks at the base of these shrubs. So I will work on that first. All right, so for my dark mixture, I'm starting with ultramarine blue, a little bit of phthalo blue, cadmium yellow medium, and then also some burnt sienna. And I'm adding some liquid. And when I block in my darks, I'm mostly just, you know, squinting at the scene and just trying to simplify what I'm seeing into very basic, simple shapes. I'm trying not to even think about, you know, the object that I'm painting. Interesting effect here. I don't usually add phthalo, and it's kind of, yeah, there's sort of that almost, you know, viridian sort of color, or that blue-green in there. That's kind of interesting. I haven't tried that before, so that's kind of fun. And I'll come back and reinforce some of the darks, especially right down low where it's the darkest. All right, so I'm mixing in a little bit more ultramarine. You can see the phthalo right there. That's still just left over on the brush. It's such a powerful pigment. And one thing I'm trying to do when I'm painting trees is trying to make sure that the shapes are, you know, irregular and not too perfect. Like this shape right here, I'm not crazy about this. I mean, there are some areas that stick up. Something like that. And then it kind of cuts in a little bit like that. More. And there's a few little sky holes in there as well. Okay, that's a little better. These dark shrubs in the foreground, these all may get moved just depending on how I feel about them once once I get the whole thing blocked in. Okay, so I'm gonna block in the sky just using a simple mixture of titanium white and phthalo blue. As usual, I'll be making adjustments to the color in the sky, but this is a good starting point. One of the things I like about phthalo blue is that it's just got so much tinting power. So you can get a fairly saturated blue even when it's a light value. Something like ultramarine, it has less tinting power, so you need to use more of it, which makes your mix darker. But yeah, as I say, phthalo, you can really get a saturated, high value mixture. Phthalo can be really difficult to use in small quantities, but if you tend to paint a little bit larger, you know, it's definitely a really handy color to have. If you're mixing up smaller quantities of paint, it can be kind of hard to control. Like even a small amount will overpower your mixture. Okay. All right, so next I want to mix up a color for these distant hills here. And I'm just squinting at the scene to kind of make sure I get the value correct. Notice that the value between these distant hills and the sky, there's not that much of a difference. So I need to keep those distant hills really light in value. All right, so I'm mixing a color for those distant hills using phthalo blue, yellow ochre, and titanium white. And I'm mixing it next to my sky color here so I can adjust the value. And this is just a starting color as well. I'll be adjusting, you know, once I've got the whole panel covered, I'll be making adjustments. You know, the key is just to cover the panel quickly and, you know, see how things are looking. In the past, I would always make like distant hills way too dark. You know, I think I was mixing them up, you know, a light value, but then I'd get it home and they just, you know, were way too dark. So I may actually be lightening these up even a little bit more. All right, so there's another hill right here that's slightly darker than this hill. So I'm gonna add a little bit of ultramarine blue just to darken it a little bit. And maybe a touch more yellow ochre and a little bit more titanium white. Paying attention to the value relationship between these two. And there's some sort of tree right here. Okay. And next I'm mixing a color for the grass, and I'm going to kind of push the warmth, kind of exaggerate it. I'm starting off with some cadmium yellow medium, a bit of yellow ochre, and then also some burnt sienna. Pretty saturated mix, but I can always tone down that saturation without too much trouble. One thing I'm paying attention to is making sure that the value of the grass is dark enough that it makes the trail stand out. The grass is pretty dark compared to the trail. Obviously I'm painting off in the distance here, but still there is definitely a value shift between the grass and the trail. Some of the grass in the foreground has a little bit more green to it, so I mixed in a bit of ultramarine and a little more cad yellow medium. All right, working into this green mixture here to mix a color for one of the distant trees. I'll be right here. Maybe a few more over here. All right, so I'm reinforcing the sky colors and actually looking for some of the subtle shifts. I'm using titanium white with a little bit of ultramarine blue. And I've noticed that there's more light in the sky over here. So I'm trying to have a little bit lighter value to the right and then a little darker value over to the left. And also more ultramarine to the left. Some of the original mixture, you know, in here along the top of the mountain, which is titanium white with some phthalo, is still showing through. So that's a good thing. So having a variety of warm and cool blues. And I like to use I like to use vertical strokes, like short vertical strokes when I'm painting the sky, and then also leave a bit of the tone coming through as well. All right, so I'm going to reinforce the darks in the trees using sort of a purple mixture. This is ultramarine blue with some alizarin crimson, and I've got some liquid mixed in as well. And I'm going to squint at the trees and look for the darkest areas, which are basically down at the base of the trees. Maybe even suggest a few of the branches. I'm still keeping the mixture fairly thin. There's going to be some areas here that are going to have you know, lighter passages where the light is shining on the foliage. In this tree, there's kind of a dark area up here, and then the light is coming in this direction, so this side of the tree, the left side of the tree, is definitely darker. And then there's like a dark pattern that kind of comes out like that. And I'm sort of carving out the light portion of this tree right here using the darks. And then there's more darks on this side over here. Now ultimately all of this has to work, you know, as far as just being a nice arrangement of shapes. Yeah, see, I like the fact that these trees are broken into two simple shapes and that those shapes are really interesting. Maybe not really interesting, but interesting enough. And the abstract pattern on this one maybe could be improved upon. It's like a dark portion. There's a dark portion up here. Again, light is coming this direction. I don't know about this right here. Might be nice to have, you know, just some, even maybe a sense of directional strokes in here, kind of like that. And one other distant shrub out here, but not, you know, get it too cluttered with detail. When you've got visible brush strokes, one of the challenges is you've got to figure out, you know, which direction to make those brush strokes. If you don't have visible brush strokes, obviously that's not an issue. There's a little bit of greenery in the trail. And then there's a shadow right being cast on the trail from this tree, so I've got to put that in as well. Mixing up a color for the trail, and I'm going to exaggerate the warmth because I'm mixing in full light here. I'm starting with cadmium yellow medium, a little bit of yellow ochre, burnt sienna, and titanium white. All right, and let's look at what this looks like. So you can see it doesn't look really that saturated. And again, I want to keep the value of this pretty light. All right, there's a shadow that's cast across the path, so I'm using a mixture of ultramarine blue and then this sort of purple mixture that I had from before, which is ultramarine blue and alizarin crimson. I've also added a little bit of titanium white to lighten it up. I like my shadows. Oh, that's way too saturated. All right, so now I'm mixing that purple color into the trail color here. I don't like my shadows to be just too dark. I like to be able to see into the shadows. All right, so at this point I've got the whole panel covered, and what I do is I'll usually walk back about 10 feet, and then I will look at the overall composition and decide what I need to do to bring this painting in for a landing or to finish it. Overall, I think the composition feels okay. These hills here kind of mimic each other. That's kind of a problem. So I might actually bump this up a little bit like this. All right, so here's what I finished up with. And after I did my scrub in, I came back with loaded strokes using synthetic flat, a number 4, and just kind of built it up and reinforced the colors using thicker paint. I did try to leave little areas, you know, of the scrub in showing through. Another thing that I noticed where I was standing, the top of this tree here, lined up directly with the top of the mountain. So I made sure to just bump it up a little bit. You know, you could go either way. You could bump it up or bump it down, but you don't want it to be obviously at the same exact height as the top of the mountain. And one thing I try to do on these trees here is just make them more or less two-tone. So there's this darker bluer shape and then the lighter green shape. But try to just make them using two simple, you know, like a lighter and a darker shape, and keep it fairly simple. And it did the same thing over with this tree here as well. I'll close up on some of the, you know, brushwork showing where the panel is coming through. All right, so I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think in the comments. If you'd like to see some extra videos and help support the channel, there's a Patreon link down below. I've got a bunch of extra videos on there, materials list, that sort of thing. So if that sounds interesting, check it out. Other than that, stay creative, and I'll see you guys in the next video.